I spent an embarrassing amount of time last year overthinking everything. Literally things that did not matter, like full spirals about whether I should say something or launch something, share something, as if the world is just sitting there on the edge of their seats thinking about me and what I'm doing. So no one is there waiting to judge me. And if you are, then hello, hi, get a life. I love you anyway. This is such an insane mindset because everybody, truthfully, for the most part, is busy thinking about themselves. That, at the core of this episode, is what all of this is about. I don't want to move in silence. I don't know if you've seen those memes that are like move in silence, but I don't want to do that, and I don't want you to either. If there's one thing that sticks, I hope it's this: take messy action and try a bunch of shit. And when this episode is over, I want you to pick one thing, just one thing that you've been sitting on, and I want you to put it out there this week. Don't be perfect, just let it exist, let it be real, because that is how anything starts. I get so fucking sick of myself sometimes, and in cases like this, I just have to rip the band-aid off. With this episode, that's what I'm doing, is ripping the band-aid off, because I've made it this big, anxious monster in my head. Literally, no one cares about me or what I do or what I say, and I try to remember that. I got the most insane DM on Instagram a few days ago. This person was like, "It seems like you're trying to do education. I'm new to education too." And I had to check myself. I like wrote it down because I thought it was funny and I thought you guys would think it's funny too. But yes, thank you, Queen, for humbling me. Respect. Like my entire account is like education, education, education. And like after doing this for 5 years, it all connects. It's actually part of what I want to talk about today is ego. And what does success look like? What does a successful business look like? I think a lot about the fear of being seen and what does integrity look like in my business. Been thinking a lot about follow through, so buckle up for that. I've obviously taken a few months away from podcasting. When I came back, I wanted this podcast, Hybrid Hangout, I want it to be like a really specific thing. I have a vision for a podcast that's like ridiculously helpful. Like you can't believe it's free. I want it to be the most valuable podcast for photographers and videographers, but I also don't want it to take itself too seriously. I want this to be dumb and funny and easy to listen to. I want a podcast that eliminates the posturing and the lying and the ego and the need to look more successful than I am or cooler than I am. Because truthfully, that's what really turns me off from a lot of educators and influencers in the business space. I have been in rooms where, like, I know for a fucking fact that I'm making 2 or 3 times more money than the clown who cannot stop talking at the people they're supposed to be educating and bragging. And so these people and me, because I'm in the same room, were like fucking held hostage by this person and their need to fill every single bit of silence with yapping and yapping and yapping about their cars and where they've traveled to and the brands that they buy. So I want to open up the door for you to get to know me and who I am at my core at the top of this podcast now that we're rebranding yet again. I grew up in a really unstable home. I went to like a million schools growing up. I've lived in apartments and trailers. I was a first generation college student who pretty much flunked every class that I took. Despite the fact that I love to learn, I have a deep love for books. This is because I have severe focusing problems and also pretty severe bouts of depression, and I was paying my way through school. I would be a waitress at a diner all night, and during the day, I did different online freelancing jobs. I'd fill the gaps by my main gig was I had to format courses for this online HVAC certification company. I formatted their Spanish courses despite not knowing any Spanish, really, even though I'd really love to learn. And then another layer of who I am is that from adolescence until now, I mean, through the rest of my life, but when I was younger, especially, I was in love with someone who grew up in a really high demand religion, in a tiny, conservative, impoverished town. That's where we met. I moved there in high school. Honestly, just because of where I came from, I was really attracted to the wholesomeness of this small town and this boy's family. Like the safety and security of that culture I moved into probably set me on the best trajectory I could have hoped for my life. And so I try to not be too critical of that, even though it did stunt me in other ways. You can thumb through the evolutions of this podcast the past 5 or 6 years and just see the evolution of my comfort with cursing in public that I would present as apolitical, even though I always leaned left and just went more and more left the older I got. I would really water down my beliefs and my message in those early years for fear of offending my more conservative clients and friends. This is important for me to bring up at the top of this podcast because even though I've become more and more outspoken, I do criticize and fear the tendency of people to just shout from the rooftops and virtue signal for people who already agree with them. And I never want to do that. I think only speaking to people who agree with you, it leads to no progress and it helps nobody. But still, I do, in my own way, I want to lovingly and gently express at the top of this rebranded podcast that this is an inclusive business. I stand for human rights. I have always viewed every piece of media through a feminist lens. That's my natural bias. But I'm constantly working to make my feminism more inclusive of BIPOC and LGBTQ plus perspectives. So my childhood dream was to be a novelist. And beyond that, I've never really cared how I made money. I think this is also important to note because my whole career I've built has been like this one long side quest. Photo, video, and education has taken up the entirety of my 20s, and I'm 30 now. So I'm 30 and I'm thinking, okay, photo, video is really reliable money, consistent money that supports my family. How can I push it for the next few years so that we own a really nice home and I can lay off? That's the truth. That's where I'm at. I was very like, viva la vie, bohème when I was younger, and I haven't quite shaken that. Being like a little capitalist queenie is super at odds with how I am naturally. I come from a long line of artists and travelers and weirdos and extremely irresponsible people. Like, that's just in me. If it weren't for my partner and kids, you literally wouldn't be able to find me. I should also say that my husband is a public school teacher now. He works so hard. He's a pillar in our community. And so early in our marriage, our values that we defined, our social contract going into marriage was that we would be okay living on very little money. We would prioritize traveling and we would prioritize nature and outdoor lifestyle when picking a place to live. And then I went on like a decade-long roller coaster of pioneering scaling a photo and video business and doing video in the dumbest, simplest way possible, and teaching other photographers how to do the same thing. Through that, I found out I really do love business and I'm really good at this shit. All of this is to say, I want you to know me. I want to be okay with you knowing me. Because I know what it's like consuming education and podcasts and listening to all these people and wondering if they're telling the whole truth or if they ever struggle or if they ever acknowledge the areas in which they suck or the missteps that they've taken and what they've learned from those missteps, what their faults are or what their definitions of success are, and if that even lines up with mine, or if their results are even possible for me in my situation. Dude, one thing I can promise you is that in this podcast, there will be zero wondering about any of that because I'm a real person. I'm a flawed person who cares a lot about doing the right thing. I don't really care much about stuff or about brands, but I do understand the power that money has and that it's important to make a lot of it. It's important for women to make a lot of money. It's important for women to make a lot of money and manage it well. Like, holy shit. My vision for Hybrid Hangout is that you're literally hanging out with me. Someone who gives a shit about you and doesn't gatekeep and teaches you how to scale your photography business without posturing or just regurgitating what every other educator is saying. I'm a working photographer, videographer. I'm never teaching from a place of theory. You can ask any member of Hybrid Hub if you start theorizing or postulating or guessing at what an outcome will be instead of just trying shit and looking at the data. I'm very critical of that. I also just want this podcast to be dumb, fun, and exciting to listen to. I am not here to make another boring, crusty podcast. I have segments. I hired like a bunch of DJs from Fiverr to remix my voice explaining all the segments. So it's like dumb meme songs for every intro of every segment. They're so bad, you're going to love them. When I have guests on, they will be expected to teach something extremely specific, and I want those lessons to be live so that if you want to join, you can ask your questions at the end, like workshop style. I will also be doing one live podcast per month, doing the same thing. I just want to innovate where I can and actually serve the hell out of you. So that's me. That's where I'm at. This is Hybrid Hangout, and I am so, so excited and honored that you're here. After I show you the insanely stupid podcast intro that my Fiverr DJ remixed for me, I am going to tell you the story of last year, everything that happened, and what brought us to this new education brand. And then we'll hopefully take some nuggets of value out of it after that. So here we go.
Hi, what's up, you little freak? Welcome to Hybrid Hangout. I'm Shayna Lloyd, hybrid shooter, creative business addict, and beautiful, gorgeous, perfect raccoon with a camera. This space is for photographers who want to scale their business with video, without the film bro energy, without the posturing, and without gatekeeping literally anything you need to succeed with your photography, videography business. There is zero gatekeeping here, zero posturing, just real strategies, real stories, real behind the scenes, and real creative fuel from someone who is objectively beautiful, gorgeous, perfect, and also frequently running on caffeine, ambition, and pure raccoon energy. If that sounds like the vibe, perfect. Let's hang out.
So last year in 2025, it truly was a year of me just going for everything that sounded interesting and exciting, and going full force forward and betting on myself and believing in myself. And in that way, everything I'm about to say, I'm telling the truth, but I also just want you to know that nothing is that serious. Like everything that didn't work out or I found out didn't work for me is actually really beautiful because I proved to myself that I can be a quick decision maker for the most part, that I can go for what I want, that I can stay curious and take the most interesting path possible and try things and not regret them. So everything I'm going to go over, I don't want messages being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, because that happened to me after a few of these things. And it's just hard to articulate in those moments, like, no, like, don't be sorry. I'm glad I did it. Yeah. So last year, a lot of you might remember that I opened a working photo video studio that where photographers could rent time and come shoot in there. I really envisioned it for it to be a community space, as well as like a working studio where people would come in and shoot and create. I just really craved in-person community, and I thought just building an inclusive, gentle space would be enough to create that community. And when I was like manifesting this, I like also put like a space for us to host education events and community events. And spoiler alert, like manifestation's so funny because like when you open your eyes to those moments where like your dreams are coming true, you're like, oh, like, no, I did this. Like, that's done. Check it off the list. We had our attendees for our in-person retreat for photographers and videographers. We hosted them in my studio to do headshots and to do a lesson. And I looked around and I was like, oh my God, we're all in a circle. There's people in other rooms shooting. Everyone's learning and laughing and sipping coffee. Like, this is everything I journaled about. I did it and I feel good about it. So that's the spoiler. But in January, I did get a studio space. I feel so grateful for this little space, honestly. Like it was a really beautiful experience. It opened in February. That opening event was so beautiful. Different vendors from the community came, people were buying prints, and everyone was sipping champagne. And my daughter and son were going around with disposable cameras, just taking pictures of everybody. And it felt so right opening the studio. It's the first time in my business actually that I took on like a shit ton of debt to open the studio and to furnish it. And I that's almost paid off. Like I don't even regret that. The whole experience in general was really beautiful. But yeah, I all spring with the studio that's about an hour from my house, which was also a decision I made. I kept running event after event to try to get photographers in there. And I really appreciate the photographers and the industry people that did come. But I was sinking, like just factually, I was sinking so much time and money month after month, and just in the red. Like I never made a profit with the studio. This really opened the door of old feelings of not fitting in and inferiority and ego, when it just wasn't a good market fit. And I haven't found my in-person community in this market that I live in. Like that's just the fact. I've had like multiple friends from Missoula or Bozeman that are like, you should move here. You'd fit in so well here. And I know I would because I love the art scene in those places and I love and adore my friends from those places so much. Just for family and lifestyle. Like we're living in Northwest Montana, and that's just kind of how it's going to be for now. But I can't seem to find my footing community wise in Northwest Montana. I keep saying that you have to be brave enough to build what you want to see, and being a pioneer in any market is lonely and tiresome. But if you're willing to do the work to be weird and inclusive, then eventually the community will come. And I still believe that's true. But I think the timing was just off for me and my studio. I wasn't in a good position for single-minded focus for that business, first of all. And I like didn't have the bandwidth for like sustained passion to make it work. I can make any business successful and work, but like I was so scatterbrained and there was not like sustained focus for the studio. And as a videographer, I've worked with most of the main photographers in the area. And I have like felt really turned off by how much they all talk shit about each other and just how much they're always like digging for information about each other from me. And then I see them at events and it's just like one big photo op where like they're dancing for phones when their cameras are out and then the phone drops and everyone stops dancing. Everyone turns away from each other the moment the camera's down. There's like a lot of Jesus and homophobia and MAGA happening in this community too. And like, I just wasn't ready for the uphill battle of trying to create a like-minded community here. And I wasn't ready to ask if like having an in-person community was worth all of the work at that time, especially. So all spring, I was feeling very tense. And I also had like a really sweet but really emotional like teenager interning for me. So that energy was just always around. And like this is during one of the most stressful and financially precarious times in both my photo video business with the studio and my education business. We were putting on the most expensive, intense, detailed event we'd ever put on. And like one of my businesses, we could really only work on it one day a week. And that one day a week was also always a really intense day. And then every other day of the week, everything in both of my businesses was on me. And there's no blame for that fact at all. It's just what it was at that time. And I was in such an awful place mentally that I felt like I was failing all the time. And that's not good for anybody. I also, during this time, made a big swing and I hired a PR person. I paid them quite a bit of money. And this was a huge lesson for me in a few areas. One big one at the top of this conversation is I'm no longer willing to hire contractors who require like 6 months of commitment because I knew by like month 2 with this person that we were not a good fit. And then we're like stuck with each other for like 4 more months. I I really felt like this person didn't understand me. Like there's a lot of focus on like motherhood and being a woman that just didn't align with how I see the world at all or how my business works. I like don't think that they got that I'm funny and that I value hard work above anything. So I'm with this person who's pitching me who doesn't really understand my values or my sense of humor or really my main message at all. And like all of these things are fine if you're working with a person who wants to do the work to figure that out for their client and serve them where they're at. But there were so many instances in that half year of working with this person where they were over promising and under delivering. I'm only mentioning this because this lesson comes up in two ways later in the year. So by May, I had a trip to New York that was really important for me personally and for my creative pursuits. Before this trip, I am told that I could save some money on my rent by basically subletting a room in my studio to this van rental company. And I was told like they'll never be there. They'll just like meet clients in this room to sign papers and that's it. And I was like, okay, yeah, like why not? I'm barely using that room. This turned into my entire storefront and business being swarmed with men and taken over for the entire summer, going into the early fall. And there's no other way to put that. You can listen to past episodes for more details in real time about that. But if we're like framing it with extreme ownership, like I should have asked so many more questions. My contract should have been so much more specific. But yeah, that was just a huge bummer. It made the studio basically unworkable. I couldn't take Zoom calls in there anymore. My door was unlocked basically all the time, and people were just like filing through my studio at all hours of the day, every single day. So I'm paying for a studio that I literally can't use. Also in late spring, my car broke down, so I bought a new car, which we totaled by hitting a deer like a week after I bought it. And this is like bumping up against busy season. So I remember I had a business trip to Washington, where we rented a car and then came home and still had no car, so we had to scramble to find a rental. We also were in a situation where we had to move houses. So there was just a lot of like thing after thing after thing happening and me like slowly like losing the tools to deal with thing after thing after thing and feeling really overwhelmed. And then also just trying to stay responsible for the success of both of the businesses. I remember I journaled that I said all of my dreams are dying and my soul is dead. Like it felt like I got to the point where there wasn't anything inside of me anymore. I felt like my entire worth to everybody in my life, like every single person, was completely based on what I could do for them and what kind of output I could have and how productive I could be. And like obviously that wasn't enough because so many things were going to shit and all of it was my fault. So then we get into midsummer, like late June into early July. You'll remember possibly if you were around that we had trademark issues, admit like during all this stuff I was dealing with, and then during possibly the worst time in my business partner's life that they've ever gone through. And so we learned that we couldn't use our old brand name right in the middle of my business partner having crazy personal and family things happen to them one after the other. So we quickly did like a taped together, glued together rebrand, which was effectively just using our names instead of the brand name because we're also marketing this retreat we were putting on. All of the marketing assets had to be changed. Everything had to be taped together. Like it was so crazy, just to avoid any trouble. And then you'll remember with the PR thing, I was working my ass off to get featured on as many podcasts as possible, all summer long. And so it was embarrassing to have to ask all of these people, all of these educators to change the links for us. And then nothing was working and everything was a taped together mess. And then when I told the PR person about this, their response was, "Oh, bummer." I was just so annoyed with them. Like I couldn't even deal with it. And then Meanwhile, like I'm shooting like crazy. My business partner was shooting like crazy. August was probably the craziest month of my year. And that led right up into the in-person retreat. We were obviously so ridiculously proud of this retreat. It was a financial success. I believe it was an experience and brand success despite everything. But we were still shooting right before and right after this event, and we were frankly so burned out. We did a podcast recapping the whole thing, and one of our attendees, Meg, this is so fucking funny. I'm obsessed with her. She messaged me um, after that podcast and was like, "A public crash out is hot. Keep on living, Shay." I swear to God, I kept saying public crash outs are hot. Keep on living, Shay, like every day for the rest of the year. So then in October, I found out my business partner was stepping away from the education business literally the day that I had made a meeting with I booked a sales call with a coach from a really high ticket like business coaching program meant to help us scale our online offers for the education business. Just because that side of the business needed to scale and become profitable to make the business worth doing. And so I took the sales call and like literally almost started crying on the sales call. But I was like, I promise I'm decisive, but let me be decisive on Monday. So this was like a Thursday or Friday, and I asked for the weekend to think about sinking a ton of money into this program. That weekend, I read a memoir about codependency. I journaled about if I wanted to continue doing an education business, what that would even look like, what it would need to look like to feel good and feel successful. And I also had to have the conversations with my business partner of, okay, like, do either of us get our existing assets? What do we do with the bank account and with the PayPal account and with the affiliate accounts? It could have been really messy if either of us were willing to let it be messy. But we weren't willing to do that because we're best friends. So we had those real conversations, and got through it and loved each other through it. But in the middle of closing down everything before we could even announce, we had actual commitments and actual business meetings and client calls that we had to honor before we could announce anything. I wanted to throw up pretty much every day in October. My anxiety gets like really physical. So I was dry heaving like constantly all year actually, but definitely like every day in October. And then around that time, I finally decided to let the studio go. It obviously wasn't the right fit, and I knew it so long ago. Like in June when I was journaling that my soul was dying and my dreams were dead and there was nothing inside of me. I knew it wasn't the right fit. I knew it so long ago, and I was mad at myself for half-heartedly trying to make it work because my experience has shown me over and over and over again that if I have the ick or if I'm half-hearted, I won't do the work that it takes to be successful. So after we finally announced that I was moving forward with the education business by myself, I had the thought to just not do anything and not sell anything for a really, really, really long time. I was like, maybe I'll just do free classes and shit to make sure I was serving the community we built and maintain trust with our people, because it didn't feel great closing down our courses. It didn't feel great at all because videography for photographers was the first thing that I ever built from scratch. And I sold it on the internet and it helped a lot of people. And that in those early years, videography for photographers did really, really, really well. It was the first thing of its kind. And it was lifetime access, which became problematic later. That lifetime access business model doesn't work, and it actually doesn't allow me to serve my students the best that I can. But I was still so proud of that course, and I still felt so much responsibility for the success of everyone who bought that course. So letting it go and saying goodbye was an insane feeling. I tried to do it with as much integrity as I could, meaning I downloaded all the course videos and the old PDFs, and I just sent them to every student before we closed it down. And then it was closed, and I felt so much lighter. Then there was free co-working. So going into November, I hosted free co-working every single day. Just trying to maintain trust with the community because holy fuck, from my point of view, why would anybody trust me after two rebrands in 1 year? And I literally closed down a course that I had been selling since 2019. I felt so anxious and like my skin was crawling all the time. And then I did go ahead and invest a lot of money into that business coaching program I talked about. Um, because I was like, I'm either going to believe in myself and believe in this education business, and I'm going to serve the hell out of my people, and I'm going to really go for it, or I'm going to just be done because I don't want like a weird side business that's education that's just a hobby. Like that's not what I want and it doesn't really help anybody. So yeah, I had finally got rid of the studio. I had invested in this course which had me pre-selling my new program. And the thing with letting go of the studio during this time, I knew it was the wrong fit in June. So I hate that I just let it drag on and on and on and on and become a thing that felt like a burden. There's that principle to hire fast and fire fast. And I think the same is true with anything in life and business. The moment you know, you need to just let go and try something else. As soon as the studio was gone, I felt so much better. As soon as I let go of the old courses, I felt so much better. It was all really fun and I learned so much. And I wouldn't be opposed to having a studio again under different circumstances, especially if like I owned my house and it was like an outbuilding on my property, or like it was in the town I live in, really close to my home, and sharing it with another creative business that just made sense. But yeah, free co-working in November was really beautiful. It was really, really fun. And it made me get my personality and my purpose and my confidence back. During co-working, I tightened up my own photo video business website. And I was doing a ton of research calls with photographers to figure out what you guys need and what would actually serve your businesses so I could figure out how to structure my new program. I wanted to not play small this time. I wanted to build the best hybrid photo video business program out there. And I'm not kidding. Like, I think I'm doing it. I think I did it. So the rebrand into Hybrid Hangout and my program Hybrid Hub was done the first week of December. And I want to be so honest about my mindset at this time. I was embarrassed that I rebranded again, that I had to ask our web and brand designer to redo these fucking assets twice in 1 year. That was not a good feeling. I was already embarrassed that I asked the educators who have collaborated with me earlier in the year to change links and titles. I literally couldn't bring myself to do it again. All of that brand building and relationship building that I did last year is a wash. Last thing I'll say about this PR person, I hated that in my literal soul. I knew this person I was paying wasn't working that hard for me and wasn't delivering what they promised. So then the ownership comes in, and I was extra angry that my chaos and my instability behind the scenes made the situation 1,000 times worse. So the reframe has to be that I am in charge of my success and everything I outsource is also 1,000% my responsibility. So what is left after all that work and time and money is just a lot of lessons. And like I have so much clarity now about what I want, where I want to go, how I want to show up. I want to be so clear about that. But that stretch of time, it was so hard to see it that way. I was cracking like to the point where I hired an astrologist because I was like, you're the only one who will understand me right now. I felt like everyone I talked to who even kind of understood what was going on was trying to make it this big dramatic thing or this drama with this person who I love. And that wasn't accurate or fair when both of us were hurting in different ways and making it a point to love each other through all of this. So, yes, then in December, course content for Hybrid Hub dropped. Students were hitting the ground running on implementing. Everything was going really well. And the holidays were happening too. I was honestly just really trying to regulate my emotions and my sense of self and my ego. It's so weird talking about this like it was awful because I was doing fine at times, great at times, but I'm also just a depressive person who has trouble connecting with people. And I went through like multiple days stretches of just being convinced that this was all a horrible idea and everybody hates me and I have no value to add to the world or to the industry. And this is even though every single piece of evidence I have says all of that is bullshit, because by January, the reviews started pouring in. I have students who have already like 10x their investment with me. They're upselling video like crazy. They're marketing so specifically. They're seeing results. They're feeling so supported by me and by the whole community. Also, by the end of January, it was really apparent that I could not get rid of daily co-working. Because I'm like keeping my foot on their fucking necks by being able to see them every day. It keeps them implementing, it keeps me implementing. Like most courses, you're handed the course content and then you never implement. And most group coaching programs, you meet once a week and that's it. You're only productive that one day a week. But with this program, that's like a course and group coaching and community and accountability and daily co-working all rolled into one. You're especially the psychos who have locked in every single day, they're being held accountable to their word every single day. So here we are in February. I'm doing a lot better, if you're wondering. But I'm also just really proud of Hybrid Hub. I sold it way before I felt like it was ready, before the brand was even done. I'm continuing to try to sell it. I'm continuing to sell it. I believe in it so much. The results are crazy. I'm so proud. And it's been going since like this podcast is even up, and this podcast is the main brand, which is hilarious. I'm finally getting this podcast going again. I'm finally ready to start being seen and like perceived by strangers again. I'm in a funny space because right now I have this thing, Hybrid Hub, that didn't even exist a few months ago, and now it's such a huge part of my life and business. I'm truly like this Hybrid Hub is changing photographers' lives. I'm proud of it, and I'm like, okay, how can I push harder? How can I make sure everyone knows about Hybrid Hub? How can I make sure I'm pulling people back in who have bought Hybrid Hub who might be falling off course? How can I be interacting with members every day? How can I serve the hell out of you guys for free with Hybrid Hangout on top of it all? This podcast episode really isn't about selling Hybrid Hub, but I want to make it clear that it's about to triple in price because I do want to keep the daily accountability and co-working, and I intend to. And I need to justify ad spend so everyone can hear about it. So if you're thinking about joining a gentle, hilarious, smart group of photographers who are all like-minded, who want every single member to succeed, like everyone's becoming best friends. It's amazing. And if you are willing and ready to add video to scale your photography business this year, please DM me at Hybrid Hangout on Instagram, and we will talk one-on-one about if it's the right move for your business. But let's try to get you in there before it like literally triples in price. Okay, so that was my story, and the next segment is Hybrid Photo Video Business Education, and you guessed it, it has a dumb meme song for the intro.
Okay, this is the part of the show where we stop yapping, yapping, and actually learn something. Yapping and actually learn something. This segment is Hybrid Photo Video Business Education, which is just a dramatic way of saying I'm teaching photographers how to scale their business with video. Pricing, packages, shooting, hybrid without overcomplicating it, editing without losing your mind, and marketing so people actually book it. No film bro energy, no gatekeeping, no posturing, just the stuff that work. All right, let's get into it.
Okay. Just because I figured this episode should be a little valuable to you and not just me yapping about myself, I really want to talk about where I'm at with goal setting, consistency, follow through, and integrity. My business coach is huge on staying in integrity with what you say you're going to do and with what you want and who you want to be. And so my journal these days is a crazy person, just every day writing the same thing over and over again, which is hold the vision, trust the process. As I go through daily calls with members of Hybrid Hub, and we're at the point where they're also having to hold on to their visions and trust the process, even when they're bored, tired, frustrated, and all of those things, questioning themselves amid the process. I have to imagine that those of you listening feel all of those things, at least weekly. To that, I just want to say, this is a journey of self-confidence. Let me say it again. This is a journey of self-confidence. Imposter syndrome asks, am I good enough? In my whole story about what went down last year, you probably heard that in between the lines. Like in between every line was, am I good enough? Am I good enough? Am I good enough? And I bet it was like a little annoying to listen to because that question, am I good enough, is so self-serving. It's selfish, it's annoying. Imposter syndrome is inherently annoying because it's self-obsession. I had two phone calls in the fall, winter, like around October, November, when the big shift in my business was happening. One of my best friends, Leanna, who's an incredible photographer based out of Bozeman, worked our retreat for us. She got me on the phone and she heard me out and all of my frustrations and how I was feeling. And she said to me, I've been hearing you say a lot lately things that make it seem like you think there's something wrong with your personality. And I was like, holy shit, yeah, I do feel like that. But like those need to be inside thoughts and they need to be squashed intentionally. I need to intentionally dispute that when I'm thinking that if I have any hope of serving anybody or doing any good in the world or in the industry. Leanna is always so adamant that I'm smart and I'm funny and that I can serve people really, really well, that I can help people and do great things. But when I'm in that space of feeling disliked or like there's something wrong with me, I can't do anything for anybody. And then my best friend from college, Shyla, who's like same person, different font from Leanna, she called me after the podcast where we announced that I'm moving forward by myself. And first of all, I was like, okay, freak, like, why are you stalking me? Why are you listening to my podcast? You're not even a photographer. And she was like, okay, I just like love you. And now I regret calling. I died. Between her and Leanna, like I can laugh so hard no matter how I was feeling a second before they came into the picture. But she said about that podcast, that last one we did, she said the only time you sounded like yourself in the whole episode was when you were like, yeah, I was just thinking like you don't have to do that or whatever I said. And she repeated it back to me, whatever I said, like so deadpan. And I was like, no, you're right. That is my real personality and how I really sound. And I lost it for a really long time. So, with those two conversations with people I love, it brought me back to the fact that imposter syndrome asks, am I good enough? But self-confidence asks, what do people need? The shift has been crucial for me. What do people need? What do my students need? What do my photo video clients need? So if you can take one thing from this episode, I hope it's that simple shift. If you find yourself asking, am I good enough? Intentionally reframe that to what do they need? The next section is a voice note from a listener. If you want to be featured on the pod, then please voice message me at Hybrid Hangout on Instagram so that I can talk to you instead of at you on the podcast. Here is the dumb theme song.
All right, it's time for listener voice note, which is exactly what it sounds like. You DM me a voice memo, I put it in the podcast, voice memo, podcast, and then I answer it on air like we're gossiping over the phone. Ask me anything: hybrid photo video, business, pricing, editing, marketing, confidence, selling, literally whatever. What? Ask me anything, whatever. What? If you want to be featured, DM me a voice note. Okay, hit play.
Okay, this question is from beautiful, gorgeous Rachel. Be sure to DM me at Hybrid Hangout with your voice notes so I can play them on the podcast. Here's Rachel.
Hi, Shay. My first two questions are about wedding weekends. So when you're documenting a full wedding weekend instead of just one day, how does your approach to storytelling shift? And then my second question is, what part of wedding weekend coverage do you think couples might undervalue but end up loving most?
Okay, I love this because I'm a hoe for multi-day destination elopements and weddings. For my storytelling approach, Frankly, on the days that aren't the wedding day, I'm really intentional about just getting what is most aesthetic and most story driven. And I'm very selective on the additional days about what I'm even shooting, because those are things that aren't typically delivered in full the way I would deliver wedding content. So it's more like just shooting what I know will end up in the highlight film. Other than that, my approach is the same. We all know, if you've been around me for a while, my process is very story driven and intentional, with the wide shot, the long shot, the close up, the details, and the B roll. And just knowing what those shots do and prioritizing photo and then getting the same shot for video. But as far as what couples end up loving, a lot of couples at first are a little resistant to the idea of doing like a separate couples session or separate adventure session in plain clothes. I really love couples' reactions when they see themselves as they normally are, or with their dogs or with their kids or families making a memory and seeing how that integrates in the final film with the more elevated version of themselves. I always get comments about the storytelling when I'm able to mix that footage in. And I love rehearsal dinners. Like being able to capture speeches from the loved ones the day before the wedding is always such great storytelling. And people are just really excited and buzzing and relaxed. And I like to see what they choose to eat the day before and what everyone wears. I love rehearsal dinners. Thank you for your question. Everyone else, please send me questions, comments, concerns, hot takes. I want to hear it all. The next segment is hot take, and this segment is kind of tongue in cheek because I actually legitimately think everybody has too many opinions, and I kind of actively want to have less opinions and just listen to people and listen to experts more than I talk. So, welcome to hot takes from someone who hates hot takes.
Hot take. I had a strong reaction to this. I'm a Cancer. I felt sad or annoyed or frustrated or abnormally excited. I felt strongly. So obviously I have to talk it through. I have feeling. I have feeling. Oh my god, podcast equipment is not expensive enough. Throw me in jail with the men who keep buying microphones, phones, and terrorizing the world with their shitty opinions. Is this really that important? Do we actually need to care this much? Everyone needs less opinions. It's a hot take segment. Let's go, I guess.
Okay, here's my hot take. Most photographers are not stuck because they don't know enough. You're stuck because you keep yourself invisible. And I don't mean invisible like you never post, I mean invisible in the ways that matter. Saying you're still refining, saying you're not ready, saying you just need to do this one thing and then you will get to it. Prioritizing things that seem really important, that seem really urgent, instead of prioritizing what's important and what will grow your business. Saying you'll talk about it, whatever you want to do, after busy season. None of that is strategy. It's just avoiding with a pretty explanation behind it. And I see it all the time. Like people, photographers, they're buying courses, tweaking their website again, reorganizing the back end, researching pricing for the millionth time. And the whole time you're avoiding the only thing that actually moves the needle, which is being seen and letting people respond to what you're building. I say this with so much compassion because I've lived in that space. I've been in that space the last few months. Have you heard this whole podcast? I told myself I was being intentional and thoughtful, but really, it's hard for me to let people watch me try and fail and test and let things be embarrassing for a little bit before they start to work. What I know is that clarity comes from doing. Every offer that has ever worked in either of my businesses started messy and then got better because it existed in the real world and not in my head, that I put in the work and I got those reps and then it got better. Honestly, this is a huge reason why Hybrid Hub already exists, even though most people wouldn't have launched a program before their brand and their podcast was even up. Photographers don't need more information. Most of you already know what to do, and I stand by that. You need a gentle, inclusive space that holds you accountable, that makes you follow through and keep going when this is boring or uncomfortable. And business can be largely boring and uncomfortable. Strategy without execution is just an organized way to stay stuck. If you're feeling stuck right now, the move is not more planning. The move is one visible action this week. Say the thing you want to say, post the offer, talk about the service, share what you're building before it feels ready. Momentum comes from messy action. Confidence comes from proof, and you have to do the thing to get the proof that it works. Proof only shows up after you do what you want to do. And if you're listening to this and feeling a little called out, same. I'm talking to myself too, a past version, and I'm talking to a lot of the people who end up thriving in Hybrid Hub once they stop waiting and start executing.
Okay, next segment, Media Recs. This is where I recommend what I'm consuming. Books, podcasts, videos, movies, the stuff I'm obsessed with. Let me influence you. Like, no, seriously, let me influence you. I'm your influencer. I'm telling you what to watch and what to listen to because it's making me strong. I'm telling you what to watch and what to listen to because it's making me smarter, hotter, more creative. And now I'm forcing it on you. Listen to me. Read the book. Watch the movie. Listen to the podcast. I'm not asking. Creative. Strong. Okay, here are my media recs.
For today's media rec, I want you to check out one of my favorite creators on YouTube, Ali Abdal. He talks about productivity, and I know that doesn't sound sexy, but the video I'm linking down below is one that I shared inside Hybrid Hub, and every member felt so called out. The video is called The Mindset That Is Slowly Destroying Your Life. I'm recommending this video because it perfectly articulates something that I see all the time with photographers, and honestly with myself too. The obsession with needing to be sure before you start. Ali talks about this idea that most of us are operating like every decision is permanent, when in reality, almost everything in business and creativity is reversible or pivotable. When you treat it like it's a one-shot test, you end up stuck researching, planning, and spiraling instead of just trying something and getting real data. What I love about it is it's not motivational fluff, it's a practical reframe. He basically makes the case that life is an experiment, not a final exam, and the people who move the fastest are the ones willing to treat their ideas like drafts instead of verdicts. If you've ever caught yourself waiting until you feel ready to raise your prices, add videos, start the YouTube channel, pitch the brand, whatever, this will call you out in a helpful way. It's a good reset on risk, momentum, and remembering that progress usually comes from doing, not deciding forever.
Okay, next segment, shout out. This is where I give people flowers while they're alive. Like, wow, this person is great. They're doing something innovative. They're doing something innovative or weird or cool, and I'm obsessed with them. This person is beautiful, gorgeous, perfect. No no's, just flowers. I need everyone to know about them. Okay, shout out time.
Okay, so this segment is exciting because I just want to be sure to highlight really awesome, badass people doing cool, innovative, creative things so that you can go gas them up. The first spotlight of the Hybrid Hangout podcast very obviously has to be the irreplaceable, gorgeous, talented, hilarious, smart Devin Larson, owner of Backcountry Bohemians. I'm so happy and honored that I got to do this podcast for 2 years with Devin. And I know we helped so many people. We threw incredible events together. We traveled to amazing places and ate delicious food and coached each other through business and motherhood together. So Devin is a standout in the industry because she does gorgeous work. But what Devin does really differently is her commitment to client experience. It's what has always attracted me to her, is how she makes people feel seen and served. And I really only ever want to work with people with that quality, and that quality comes to her so naturally. The risk Devin takes in her business is being incredibly forward with her values and is super loud even when it would be easier to be quiet. The results Devin gets comes in the form of 2 things. Upsells, so primarily with adding on multiple days of coverage and with Super 8, and with leveraging planner connections. What can listeners learn from Devin? So what you can learn from Devin is the art of serving the hell out of vendors and making sure that every vendor gets photos and videos that they can use for their marketing and portfolios. Go follow Devin at Backcountry Bohemians immediately. And if you're thinking about joining Hybrid Hub, she's teaching everything you need to know about shooting, processing, editing, and selling Super 8 inside of Hybrid Hub. DM me at Hybrid Hangout on Instagram to chat about if Hybrid Hub is the right next step for your business. If you want to learn Super 8, Devin is the person to learn it from, and she's teaching it inside. Friends forever, no choice. So, if you take literally anything from this episode, let it be this. Stop waiting until you feel ready and just take messy action in public. Nobody is watching as closely as you think, and the people who are watching are usually just relieved someone else went first. Your action step is simple. Pick one thing you've been overthinking and do the smallest possible version of it this week. Post the thing, send the pitch, outline the offer, record the ugly first draft. Momentum only comes from movement, and confidence only comes from proof, and proof only happens when you actually do something. If this episode hit, I want to hear from you. Please review on your favorite platform. DM me at Hybrid Hangout on Instagram. Send a voice note if you want to be featured on the pod, or just let me know what you're building so I can hype you up and support you. Truly, nothing makes me happier than seeing you guys execute. Thank you for hanging out with me. And for the very first episode of Hybrid Hangout, I'm really glad you're here. I'm really excited about what we're going to build together. So chat soon.
Beautiful, gorgeous, perfect raccoon with a camera.